There is a brand new Range Rover for 2022, and in this video we're going to talk about some of the spec and tech, but more importantly we're going to discuss the design. I'm going to compare the front, the side, and the rear to the current generation to the new one and let you know exactly what I think about it. Today's video is sponsored by Charity Stars. I've partnered up with Charity Stars to give you the opportunity to win a brand new Tesla Model Y Performance and $10,000 cash while supporting a great cause. All you have to do is go to charitystars.com/Bembly. You'll get 100 extra entries with any donation. I think that's a fantastic deal. In addition, this fundraiser supports the Jamie Kimball Foundation for Courage, a charity whose mission is to create a future without intimate partner violence. They're focused on eliminating intimate partner violence through relationship training, education, seminars, research, and more. You can learn more about the Jamie Kimball Foundation for Courage and their mission by visiting charitystars.com/Bembly. This is a fantastic opportunity to be a part of something great and also get the chance to win a Tesla Model Y Performance and the $10,000 cash. As you know, the Tesla is quick 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds with a range of over 300 miles. That puts the Tesla Model Y Performance at the top of what's on the EV market right now. So make sure you visit charitystars.com/Bembly to get 100 extra entries with any donation amount and your chance to win the brand new Tesla Model Y Performance plus $10,000 cash. Now, I've said this for a couple of years now that more and more manufacturers are starting to realize that adding more lines and styling features onto the body of a vehicle doesn't necessarily improve it. We reached a high point around 5 or 6 years ago where there was no other way but to start cleaning up the designs and reduce the styling and focus on what's important for the brand identity, such as clean proportions and hammering down on the key graphical elements and components of the brand. And the Range Rover here is definitely no different. It's a great example of an evolutionary design that is unmistakably a Range Rover, but also unmistakably new and fresh. Compared to the previous version, this design is all about taking out instead of adding in. More on the details on the design changes in a bit when we compare the old to the new in Photoshop here in just a second. The new Range Rover comes in 3 key configurations: a standard wheelbase first edition, an extended wheelbase SV with a 4-seat interior, and you have a 7-seater option now as well. So what about the engines here? Well, you do have the 3-liter turbocharged inline-6 with 48-volt hybrid assistance in the base SE, and this puts out 395 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. However, Range Rover did not ditch the V8 for 2022, and you can have it with a brand new 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8 making a massive 523 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque, and this launches this big Range Rover from 0 to 60 in just 4.4 seconds. There will also be a plug-in hybrid 6-cylinder for the 2023 model year, and this makes 434 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque with a projected EV range of about 62 miles from its 38.2 kilowatt-hour battery. And all-wheel drive is of course standard on all new Range Rovers. However, you can choose to make it rear-wheel drive by disconnecting the front axle now. This is still very much a great off-roader as well, with a massive ground clearance of an impressive 11.6 inches, with the air suspension offering a maximum rise of 5.7 inches. You have 6 off-road driving modes available in the new Range Rover, and you can plow through 3 feet of water. And you can order your 2022 Range Rover right now with prices starting from $105,350 for the SE all the way up to $164,850 for the long wheelbase version. Now let's jump into Photoshop and let's have a look at this new design. Let's compare the old to the new, and I'm gonna let you know what I think about it. What's really cool about Range Rover here is that they've always done this evolution over revolution, and in that regard it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Porsche 911, even from all the way back from the 70s. As you can see up here, if you blur your vision right here, you can't tell these apart because they all look the same in the proportions and in the graphics as well. We have this boxy design that's stuck with us from the 70s right here, which you can apply onto every single Range Rover up until today, even the new 2022 model, which we're gonna have a look at in just a second. And we also have this sloping roofline. You have a little bit of a curvature right here, and on top of that you have this line at the bottom here going a little bit up at the rear end here. What this does, it creates a lighter feeling in the rear end compared to the 1994 version right here, and of course the 1970, where we have very parallel lines going all the way here. So instead of having those lines continue into the 2002 model, they wanted to change a little bit to make it look lighter and maybe a little bit sportier as well, specifically in the rear end. You can see it more clearly here in the 2013 model, where we have this graphic now swooping upwards, and that in combination with the roofline going a little downhill, as you can see. If these lines continue, they're going to intersect at some point all the way back here or somewhere. But what it does to the profile is it reduces the weight. It's a heavy SUV. You don't want to have it look heavier than it necessarily needs to be. So that's playing around with proportions and graphics to reduce the weight specifically in the rear end. And I've always been a fan of the side profile of the Range Rover. It looks very luxurious, but at the same time, it looks like a proper off-roader as well. So I want to have a look at the front evolution here as well. If this is talking about the proportions and the evolution of the proportions of the car, this front evolution right here, as we can see, is talking about and analyzing the evolution of the graphics, which still keeps a very tight loop or circle when it comes to adding stuff onto the Range Rover here. And as you can see, we have the positioning of the key graphics are still the same as we had back in 1970. Nothing there has changed, and the overall face, the layout of the graphic features are still the same. We have this air intake down here and the fog lights down here as well, like we have all the way back to the 70s. I think that's why Range Rover is selling so well, because people know what they get, and you can instantly recognize a Range Rover even if you're not really into cars. And I think that's an important point to talk about, and that's also the importance of keeping a structure through the generations and have it be more of an evolution over revolution. If you compare this to other SUVs that have changed dramatically from the inception up until today, they don't have the same kind of strong brand identity as the Range Rover and Land Rover in general. For example, the same goes with the G-Wagon, for example. Everybody knows about the G-Wagon. It hasn't changed at all, but the latest version of the G-Wagon is still a very modern design and super luxurious, while still retaining the old traditional proportions and specifically the graphics onto the car. And that's kind of what they're doing here as well. Let's have a look at the front view here. And this is the view. When I saw this, I thought, did they really change anything here? Because it looks pretty much the same as the old version right here. So up top, this is actually the old version. Down here, you have the new version. But at the same time, as I said in the beginning, this is all about reducing, take away stuff that's not necessary, make it into a cleaner design where we hammer down on the key graphic of what our brand is made up of. And that's exactly what happened here. We still have the key graphics being pretty much identical right here as we have on the old one. We have that in the new one as well. The framing of the graphics is the same. We don't have these parts right here sticking out up here like we have on the previous generation. Instead, what they did down here is to reduce, simplify, keep the graphics very, very simple. We have just a rectangle here that covers everything we need, that did house everything that was in this old version right here. Now have that being in this rectangle with the fog lights being down here, positioning down here instead of having them be down here like we have on the previous generation. It's a clear evolution, but at the same time, it looks a lot more modern just by simplifying and reducing. It's a little bit more of a product design here for the front end of the new Range Rover, and I actually like it a lot. I usually don't like when a lot of product design features sneak into the automotive design world, but in this case with the Range Rover, I think it actually works more so when we look at the rear view at the end of this video. Before that, let's have a look at the side view. One interesting thing here that I'm not so sure about with the new Range Rover, I love how clean this surface is while still retaining the key line. So instead of having this additional piece here, this graphic part that they had to manufacture, they had to put into the car and have it go all the way back here. Instead of having that, how can we simplify that line and make it still be there as a key part of the design, but not have it be a separate part? And as you can see, they just implemented that line into the body of the car. So it's now a part of the sheet metal or aluminum or whatever this is made of, instead of having it be a separate graphic feature. And also this part right here now sits very, very flush with the body, and so does these door handles right here. And all of these flush changes to the Range Rover has increased the aerodynamics with to 12%. So they do have a function as well. But I just want to continue with this line right right here. Beautiful line, beautiful key line of a Range Rover that still needs to be there in some way, and you have it right here, as you can see, in the body line of the car. And on top of that, we still have the same kind of sloping roofline right here as you have on the new one right here. But the thing that I'm not really sure about is the reduction of bumpers here. I understand having no bumper in the front end, you want to have it to be as sleek as possible. But for a Range Rover, one thing I really liked about the current generation or the previous up here is I really liked this part right here. I think this bumper, it looks like a great send-off for this design, and without it, I think it might look a little too naked here. What I want to have is just a tiny little bumper that sticks out, something like this. Doesn't have to be anything complicated, but I just want to have a base for the rear end to rest on, like we have up here. That would be the bumper. Graphically, I think it would make more sense, at least to me, to have the weight of the rear end, have it be resting on a piece of bodywork that is the bumper. It can be integrated in the bumper, in the bodywork. It doesn't have to be a separate piece of bumper, but I would love to see the bodywork of the rear end here just push out a little bit and create a visual base for the rear end like we have on the previous generation right here. Other than that, I do love that we have blacked out pillars here. If you look at this Range Rover from a top view, this roof right here is going to look like it's sitting in an island of a black sea, and it looks pretty cool if you look at it from a straight top view. But looking at the front end here, you can just see how similar these are, and I really admire Range Rover, not Rolls-Royce, for doing this and having the discipline to not go in and do something crazy here. Keep the identity of what your car is and what people want the new Range Rover to be and are used to seeing, but at the same time simplify it even more. We do have a bit of a bumper here. You can see this little piece right here. We do have something sticking out here that I guess would resemble a bumper, but it's barely visible. But let's have a look at the rear view, because that's where the big changes really happens. All right, so I've heard a lot of opinions already about this rear end. Some people love it, some people hate it, just as it's supposed to be, I guess, every time a new car comes out, or usually very polarizing. But this, when I first saw it, my first impression was it looks like a Rolls-Royce. Is it a Cullinan update or what is this? But it looks very, very clean. I mean, just compare. This is where the designers really had to get to work to try to really simplify the rear end. This is already a super simple rear end. You can see we have very straight line, horizontal lines, simple taillight like this, just a rectangle that sits in the body. And so how are we going to simplify this? Well, one piece is to remove the bumper like we have up here and talked about in the side view. As you can see, what I would want to have here is to have this chamfer here, beautiful chamfer by the way, that goes all around the rear end and houses the beautiful graphics, simplistic graphic of the rear end. This could be a Volvo design in my opinion. It's so clean with these chamfers playing really well together. You can see how the light is reflecting differently here from what it does here, from what it does down here. That's what a beautiful chamfer does. It creates a very dynamic looking surface, although it's still a very simple surface, and that's why I love chamfers when they're done correctly like they are here. But at the same time, I kinda want to see this line go into a bumper like this, so we have something sticking out right here. I wonder what that would look like. I think it would look pretty good. I think it would maybe suit a Range Rover a little more, because it's supposed to have this rugged feeling. At the same time, it's supposed to be a luxury car. And these LEDs behind here, these are the strongest LEDs ever produced. The reason being is when it's off like it is here, you're not supposed to see any red going through these blacked out taillights. It looks very cool, but that also means that if you want to have them be visible as normal taillights when they're on, they need to be extra strong to have the same kind of brightness as it would have if these weren't blacked out. It looks absolutely beautiful and so simplistic and minimalistic, and it suits the Range Rover and the overall styling, specifically now with this new side details here. Here is the line that we talked about that goes up here into this, I guess you would call this a bumper now, and then you have this line going down, same thing as we've had since early 2000s. These lines going to intersect at some point, reducing the weight of the back end right here. by having those lines go like this instead of having them be parallel. So my final thoughts here on the Range Rover, I'm really excited about this design. I think it's what more companies should do. As I said in the beginning, I think they should take their winning design, if they haven't done it for the last decades or so, like Range Rover has with a Range Rover right here from the 70s, starting to just evolve the design. I think if you have a winning design right now and you're a car manufacturer, focus on that design. Don't change it up too much from generation to generation. Focus on why people love it. What makes it great? What are the key proportions of this design and the key graphic elements, and what can we take away instead of adding? And I think this Range Rover, when I look at it, it looks like an EV. I think Range Rover, they only come out with a new Range Rover every decade or so, so this is going to be around for a while, and it looks already like it's EV ready, if you know what I'm saying. It's very flush, it's very covered up. I can see this being an EV in the not so far away future, and I think that's kind of what this design language has to do with a lot as well, why it looks so minimalistic and so clean when it comes to different graphic elements and parts adding onto the car. They reduced all that from the previous generation and created this beautiful design. I can't wait to see this out in real life, because as you know, when you see it on pictures, videos, and when you see it in real life, it's two totally different opinions and experiences. And I think I'm gonna be really happy with the rear end without the bumper, even though, you know, it's a Range Rover. I would love to see a bit more of a bumper to just rest the rear end graphics on, but overall it's a great design. I can't wait to see it in real life.